All right. So last night I was on DM Bloodworth's show talking about magic and the various types of magic that could be used in your campaigns. Some people do not like Vancian magic. Some people prefer other, you know, styles of magic, like magic based on mana or magic where you have to make rolls to succeed or bad things happen, etc. And it was a great conversation. And if you did not see the video, my homie Ducato was on there. And I think we managed, and by we, I mean me, managed to keep on subject well enough. As you all know, I do have a tendency of, you know, allowing the old stream of consciousness to take over and just go in all kinds of places. But in this case, I tried to stay on the ball, show respect to Bloodworth, who I think is a great guy, and talk about magic. Now, I didn't mention this last night, and which is, the cause of this video, really. What I didn't mention is there is a magic system out there that I actually am very, very fond of, and that is kind of ancient, but not. And that is the magic system that made its first appearance in Lion and Dragon, but has since become kind of the standard for one of my favorite role playing games of all time, Baptism of Fire. And what I like about that system is that it's such a magic light system that magic, when it does happen in game, is very much more meaningful. Like if you've got a character and they can actually do some form of magic, yeah, it's very meaningful when they do it. But not only that, it can be dangerous too, considering that, certain powerful forces within the game world could view your dealing with magic to be, heretical or satanic, at which point, you could be in a lot of trouble, let's just say. And by a lot of trouble, I'm talking, getting burned at the stake kind of trouble, right? The characters that can actually do magic are very limited. It's like the priest, the monster hunter guy, the holy warrior, and the bard class, the Scumrazni. And even their versions of magic that they do, again, your character may never have, depending on roles and stuff, may never have more than 6 spells, even if you played the game for years. And in the case of some classes, they're not actually spells like where chant some mystical words and move your hands around like Naruto, and then a magic thing happens. They're more like some of the classes basically just have rituals. Like the demon hunter guy, the monster slayer, whatever. Uh, his thing is he can make amulets and things like that to protect him or her, but I'm going to say him, from the monsters that he fights. And of course, these things, they don't just magically appear for free. They take time. money, effort to make, but then you could end up with a amulet that when you wear it, you get a bonus anytime you may have to face, vampires, Strigoi or something, right? So that's a type of magic. And then of course the the priests can get exorcism magic and they can get healing magic. But the concept of I'm a, eighth level mage and I have a spell book and I can do all these things. That's just not really a thing in Baptism of Fire, Uh, the magic is handled by the writer, RPG Pundit. The way he did the magic is much more like what you would read about in a fairy tale, like instead of like, the Vancian thing or whatever, it's more like a coven of witches is in the woods and they um, do a ritual that causes some horrible, harmful thing to happen to somebody, that's kind of what it is. And then, of course, a very honorable and good and noble priest might be able to make prayers to the heavens above and try to protect people or heal somebody or what have you, like that. So yeah, the magic is much more of the kind of magic that you might have actually read about if you read old medieval stories about witches and things like that. It's much less. I'd say it's closer to Tolkien and a lot further away from Vance or Lieber. It's just its own thing, right? And of course, it comes with its own dangers too, because a character that does not have the willpower, and you could say this is handled by the vices and virtues in the game, which is kind of how the game defines alignment. It's not enough that your character is, say, lawful. Uh, your virtues and vices will determine like what that even means. Like your character could be a lecherous scumbag. He could be a, really greedy person who will, always try to look out for himself first. He could be a guy of high virtue who's always given to charity and, taking care of people and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of ways this can work. And one of the negatives is that characters who deal in magic, especially like the Skamrazni, but the monster hunter is at risk here too. Even the priest can be at risk, or the holy warrior. They tend to draw the eye of infernal forces. And that means that, demons and various other evil spirits will constantly try to test them to put them into positions that are very conducive to their falling from the grace of God. So it's kind of like Roger Bacon, and if you've ever read any of the stories of Roger Bacon and John Dee and stuff like that, who were supposedly actual medieval alchemists slash wizards and got involved in things. And I think it's with Roger Bacon, he eventually burned his entire library of magical tomes and stepped away from it because he was realizing that he was going to be corrupted. It was going to happen. Now that won't happen to a priest automatically, obviously, but I mean, if you're working for the infernal forces, I mean, corrupting a priest by promising them magic and stuff like that. I mean, that is going to be the feather in your cap that makes, your bosses maybe happier with you, right? So even a priest who may have some healing magic has to be careful. So basically, yes, the game has magic in it, but it's totally different than any other kind of magic. It's much more revolved around rituals and things like that. And then also another thing to say is that when you level, since a lot of times you get abilities at random, unless you decide to, you know, skip that and just go straight for the ability you want. That's getting more into the rules. Me personally, I would not ever do that unless I felt desperate. I would rather roll twice on the table and get two abilities for my character, even if they're not necessarily the abilities I wanted, than give up a roll and just pick one ability. Just because I feel like, well, having read the game and really went over it, there are no bad abilities. Like every ability your character could get is an ability your character can use. So, uh, you know, if you go from level 1 to 2, do you want to have your basic ability plus one, which might be a really cool ability, granted, or would you rather have your basic abilities plus two? And that's true of every level. When you level up, you can either get two abilities at random, at least that's how I've been doing it, or you can pick one specific ability that your character really wants. So, yeah. Anyway, so I've rambled on long enough. I should think about getting this video uploaded. But the point I'm trying to make is that there are many magical schools out there for role playing. You know, you could go with the completely chaotic dungeon crawl classic where you roll the die and figure out what happens afterwards, like, and some people really love that. My players were not such fans. You can go with the tried and true, I would say, the vanilla of Magic, which is Vancian. And I do not mean that in a negative way. Hell, vanilla is my favorite ice cream flavor, really. Vanilla and pecan, bear pecan. But what I mean by that is that you will, it's just the tried and true. It's the one that most people know, they're comfortable with. You got a spell book, you got X amount of spells, you're going to do your thing, right? Not a big deal. But if you really want to step out away from that kind of shadow, then you would definitely want to look into maybe Middle Earth or Rollmaster magic. That's kind of some cool stuff there. And if you're a fan at all of the Old World by Games Workshop, Warhammer, uh, the magic system they use in Warhammer is truly bonkers, off the wall, dangerous, deadly, but also super powerful. So, I mean, you're going to ask yourself, hey, is this the kind of thing I want to do with my life? Do I want to play a game where if I ever roll like a 95 or higher on percentile dice, everybody just dies. And in theory, yes, everybody, because it turns out when you rip portals into reality from our world into the warp, chances are the guys hanging out with you, they're going to die too, whether you wanted them to or not. So, I mean, but if you're playing OSC and whatever, and you're perfectly fine with Fancy and Magic, then be fine with Fancy and Magic. There's nothing wrong with it. It served very well for hell, going on 45 years now, right? So nothing wrong with it, you know. Um, but I do have to admit, I am a huge fan of Baptism of Fire and how they handle magic in a much more, I don't want to say historical, but it's a lot closer to what we've read in fairy tale than a lot of other systems. And I appreciate that. But if that's not your thing, man, it is what it is, right? Anyway, peace and love. I'm going to get this uploaded and, have a great day.